The marketplace was loud and full of voices. Merchants shouted about their goods, buyers argued about prices, and the smell of dust and sweat filled the air. But in the middle of the noise stood a small wooden stage, and on that stage were two alien sisters. Their wrists were tied with rough rope, their faces pale, and their eyes full of fear. The older sister held the younger one close. Her arms were thin but strong enough to shield her sister from the stares of the crowd. The younger girl trembled, hiding her face against her sister's shoulder. Around them, aliens from different worlds raised their hands, shouting numbers, shouting bids. To them, the sisters were not children, not family, not life. They were only property. The auctioneer, a tall alien with cold green skin and sharp teeth, banged his hammer on the stage. His voice cut through the air like a knife. 2 for sale, 2 together, who will give the first price? The crowd cheered and laughed. Some shouted that the sisters should be split. 1 for the mines, 1 for the brothels, they jeered. The younger sister cried harder, and the older whispered softly, I will not leave you. But the cruel merchant who owned them smiled from the corner. He knew the rule. Together they were less valuable. Separate they could be sold for much more. His plan was simple. He would make sure they never saw each other again. He leaned forward and gave a nod to the auctioneer. The crowd understood. The sisters would not be sold as one. The hammer hit the stage again. First the little one, the auctioneer shouted. The younger girl screamed and clung to her sister. The older one begged, Please no, do not take her. But her words were drowned out by the growing roar of the crowd. Hands rose, numbers were called. The little one's price climbed higher. Each number felt like a blade cutting into their bond. The older sister's knees shook. She tried to cover her sister, but guards pulled her arms away. Do not fight, one guard hissed, or we will beat you both. She bit her lip until it bled, yet her eyes never left her sister's face. The little one's tears sparkled in the harsh sunlight. The cruel merchant laughed. His sharp teeth flashed. To him, this was only business. He watched the numbers grow, thinking of the profit. To him, the sisters were only coins, only a deal. He could already imagine the moment they screamed as they were torn apart. But then, through the crowd, a figure moved. It was not another alien. It was a human. He wore simple clothes, dusty boots, and carried no weapon. His face was tired, his beard unshaven, but his eyes were sharp. They were not the eyes of a buyer, not the eyes of a man looking for profit. They were the eyes of someone who saw the truth. The human stopped at the edge of the stage. His hands clenched into fists at his side. The crowd noticed him. Some laughed. A human here, what does he want? Others whispered, he cannot afford even bread. Why is he here? But the human said nothing. He only looked at the sisters. His gaze steady, his jaw tight. The auctioneer sneered. Well, well, a human wants to join. Do you have money, stranger? Do you know the rules? The crowd laughed louder, thinking it was a joke. The human lifted his hand. His voice was calm but firm. I will take them. The laughter stopped. The crowd stared. The merchant narrowed his eyes. Both of them, the human added. His words were like a stone dropped into still water. The auctioneer blinked, then grinned. You cannot pay for both. Human, these girls will be sold apart, that is the rule. The human's eyes burned. He stepped forward, his voice louder. No, they stay together. Gasps spread through the crowd. The cruel merchant stood, his smile fading. His plan was breaking. The human's defiance was not expected. A murmur ran across the marketplace. Why would a human care? Why risk money? Why risk trouble? The older sister's eyes widened. Her lips trembled as she whispered, He wants to save us. The younger one peeked up, her tears slowing. For the first time there was a flicker of hope. The auctioneer slammed his hammer again, trying to regain control. Then let us see how much this human can pay. The bidding begins. The crowd roared once more. But now every eye was not only on the sisters, every eye was on the human who dared to stand against the rule. The sisters clutched each other tighter. Their hearts pounded as they watched him. And in that moment, The marketplace was no longer just noise. It was a battlefield of will. One human against a cruel alien, one stranger against the weight of greed. And the fight for the sisters' bond had just begun. The marketplace held its breath. The human had spoken words no one expected. He wanted both sisters. Not one, not split, but together. The auctioneer blinked in surprise, then quickly forced a smile. He thought the human would be easy to break. He thought the game was his. The cruel merchant stepped forward. His green skin gleamed under the sunlight. His sharp teeth showed as he laughed. "A human dares to challenge me," he said. His voice was thick with pride. "Do you know who I am, stranger? Do you know what it costs to own even one of them?" The crowd leaned in, eager to see how the strange human would answer. The human did not back down. His eyes stayed on the sisters, his jaw was tight, his voice was steady. "I will pay whatever it takes," he said. The auctioneer smirked. "Very well then, let us start." He slammed his hammer. 50 credits for the little one," he shouted. A hand shot up from the crowd. 60, another voice called. 70, shouted another. The numbers climbed fast. The merchant smiled. He raised his hand lazily. 100. The human's hand lifted without hesitation. 200, he said. The crowd gasped. Whispers rose like smoke. Where did he get that much? How can a human pay? The auctioneer's grin grew wider. "Ah, now this is interesting. 300, the merchant growled. 400, the human replied. The sisters clung to each other on the stage. Their hearts pounded. The older one dared to hope, but fear still burned in her chest. What if the human failed? What if the merchant won? The merchant raised his hand again. 600, he shouted, his voice boomed like thunder. The crowd roared with laughter. Too much for a human, he cannot match that. But the human lifted his hand again. His voice cut through the noise. 700. The crowd fell silent. The air grew heavy. The auctioneer stared at the human, trying to read his face, trying to see if this was a trick. But the human's eyes did not shake. The merchant's smile twisted into a snarl. His greed burned hotter. He slammed his fist against the table. 1,000, he roared. His words echoed like a hammer strike. The crowd cheered and shouted, "He is finished. No human can beat that. This is the end." The sister's hope cracked. The younger one sobbed against her sister's shoulder. The older one whispered, "No, do not give up, please do not give up." The human stood still. His heart raced. He did not have much. His pockets were nearly empty. But he thought of the sisters. He thought of the fear in their eyes. He thought of how alone they were. And deep inside him something stronger than money rose. He stepped forward. His voice was not loud, but it was full of fire. 2,000, he said. The world seemed to freeze. The crowd went silent. The auctioneer dropped his hammer. The merchant's face twisted with rage. His sharp teeth bared. "Impossible, you lie," he shouted. But the human reached into his bag and threw a small pouch onto the stage. It clattered open, revealing credits and coins. Not enough to match the number he had spoken, but enough to show he was willing to give all he had. The human's voice shook, but his eyes did not. "This is everything. This is my blood, my work, my life, and it is worth more than your greed." The crowd gasped. Some whispered, "He is mad. He cannot win." Others muttered, "But look at him. He is not afraid." The auctioneer hesitated. He looked at the merchant. He looked at the human. For the first time, doubt flickered in his greedy eyes. The merchant slammed his fist again. "You will regret this, human," he spat. "You dare to steal from me." But the hammer came down. The auctioneer's voice cracked as he shouted, "Sold! The sisters belong to the human." The crowd erupted in noise. Some laughed, some shouted in disbelief. But the sisters' cries were not of sorrow anymore. They were of relief. They rushed into the human's arms, clutching him tightly. Their chains clinked. Their tears wet his clothes. The merchant's eyes burned like fire. His hands shook with fury. He had been challenged, and he had lost. He leaned close to the human and hissed, This is not over. You may have won today, but I will take them back. I will tear them from you, and when I do, you will beg me for mercy." The human did not answer. He only tightened his arms around the sisters. He turned his back to the merchant and walked away from the stage, step by step through the crowd, through the noise, through the storm of whispers. And in that moment, the people of the marketplace saw something they had never seen before. A human who stood against greed, a stranger who defied power, a man who risked everything, not for profit, but for the bond of two alien sisters. The merchant's laugh followed him, low and dark. "Run while you can, human," he hissed, "because I will find you." The human did not look back. The sisters held his hands, their chains dragging on the ground. And though the danger was not over, though the fight had only just begun, the bond between them had already grown unbreakable. The marketplace slowly faded behind them, but the danger did not. The human walked quickly, holding the chains that still bound the sisters. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear of losing money, but from fear of losing them. The girls clung to him, their small steps struggling to keep up. The older sister whispered, "Will he follow us?" Her voice was low, but her eyes kept darting back to the crowd. She knew the merchant was not finished. She knew men like him never gave up. The younger sister said nothing. She only squeezed the human's hand, as if she believed holding on tight could keep her safe. The human led them through narrow alleys, past broken stalls, past shadows where strangers watched with hungry eyes. The city smelled of smoke and metal. Above, banners of alien houses flapped in the wind. Below, the ground was cracked and dry. It was a place where hope had no home. He turned a corner, and the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Heavy boots, steady and fast. The human's chest tightened. He glanced back and saw shapes moving in the distance, tall hunters with glowing weapons. The merchant had sent his men. The sisters gasped. The older one pulled the younger close. "They are coming," she whispered. Her voice shook. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The human's jaw tightened. He kept walking faster, but the hunter's steps grew louder. The human spotted a narrow stairway that led into the lower docks. He pulled the sisters toward it. "This way," he said. His voice was calm, though his pulse raced. They rushed down the stairs, the air growing colder, the space darker. The docks were a maze of metal containers and rusted ships, a place where anyone could vanish or be trapped. The younger sister stumbled, her chains catching on a step. She cried out. The sound echoed through the empty dockyard. The hunters quickened their pace. The human turned, eyes sharp. He lifted the girl in his arms and kept running. The older sister followed close, her breath ragged. They reached a corner and hid behind a stack of crates. The human crouched low, placing the younger one beside her sister. He pressed a finger to his lips. The girls nodded, holding their breath. The hunters' voices grew louder, rough and cruel. "Find them," one hissed. "The merchant wants them alive." Another laughed. "We'll tear the human apart." Their boots clanged against the metal floor. Their shadows stretched long across the walls. The older sister clutched her sibling, whispering softly, "Do not cry. Do not make a sound." The younger one buried her face against her chest. The human peered out from the crates, his hands clenched around a loose metal pipe he had picked up. His eyes narrowed. He was outnumbered, but he was not helpless. The hunters stopped near the stairway. Their glowing weapons hummed, casting eerie light on the walls. One of them bent down and touched the floor. "They came this way," he growled. His head turned slowly, scanning the shadows. The human's breath caught for a moment. Silence. Only the distant drip of leaking pipes. Only the heavy beat of 3 small hearts. Then the hunters moved again, splitting into groups, searching deeper into the docks. Their footsteps faded slowly, though not far enough. The human leaned close to the sisters. His whisper was low and firm. "We cannot stay here, we must keep moving." The girls nodded, trusting him. Even though fear sat heavy in their stomachs, they held on to his voice like a rope in the dark. They crept through the maze of crates, the chains dragging softly behind them. Every sound felt too loud, Every shadow felt alive. The younger sister nearly tripped again, but the human steadied her. He carried her when she grew too weak, never letting her go. They reached the far end of the dock, where an old cargo ship rested. Its paint was peeling, its engines cold. A faded sign read, "For sale, abandoned and forgotten." The human's eyes lit with a spark of hope. "If we can get inside," he said, "we might survive." But the ship was locked. The door sealed with rusted metal. The human tried to pull it open, his muscles straining. The sisters watched with wide eyes, praying silently. Behind them, a sharp sound echoed. The hunters had returned. Shouts filled the air. "There they are," a voice barked. The sound of boots pounded once more. The sisters screamed. The human slammed his shoulder against the door. It groaned, but did not break. He hit it again, harder. His body ached, but he did not stop. The hunters drew closer, their weapons glowing brighter. "Nowhere to run," one shouted. The sisters clung together, their tears falling. The human roared and threw his weight against the door one last time. With a crack, the rusted seal broke. The door swung open. "Inside now!" he shouted. The sisters ran in, stumbling into the dark interior. The human followed, slamming the door shut behind them. The hunters' fists banged against the metal, their voices snarled. "We will tear it down! You cannot hide!" Inside, the air was thick with dust. The floor was cold. The sisters huddled close as the human searched desperately for a way to power the ship. His hands moved across old panels, broken wires, and dead screens. Nothing worked. Panic clawed at his chest. Then a low hum. A light flickered. The ship's core was not completely dead. The human pressed buttons, pulled levers. His voice trembled. "Come on, come on." The hunters outside shouted louder. The metal door bent under their strikes. The sisters prayed silently, holding each other tighter than ever, and then the ship's engines roared to life. The floor shook. The lights glowed bright. The human grabbed the controls. The hunters screamed as the engines blasted fire across the dock. The ship rose, breaking free from its chains. Dust and metal flew into the air. The hunters scattered, their weapons useless against the storm of fire and wind. The human steered hard, pushing the ship out of the dock and into the night sky. The sisters gasped as the stars opened above them. For the first time in so long, they were not trapped, not chained on a stage, but free. The younger one whispered, "We are flying." The older one looked at the human, her eyes wet. "You saved us," but the human's eyes stayed sharp. His voice was low. "We are not safe yet," he said. He knew the merchant's fury was only beginning. He knew the hunters would come again. But for now they had escaped, fragile but alive, united but still in danger. The old cargo ship rattled as it tore through the night sky. Its engines screamed, leaving trails of fire and smoke behind. Inside, the sisters held onto each other tightly. Their small bodies shook with fear. Every bump, every shake of the ship made them cry out. The human kept his hands firm on the controls. His jaw was clenched, his eyes were sharp and full of focus. He had stolen time, but he knew it would not last. The merchant's reach was long. His hunters would not give up. He glanced at the sisters and whispered under his breath, "Hold on, I will keep you safe." But already shadows appeared in the stars behind them. 3 sleek hunter ships broke through the clouds. Their engines hummed like predators ready to strike. Their lights cut across the dark sky. They were faster, newer, built for pursuit. The merchant had wasted no time. The younger sister pointed with trembling hands. "They are coming," she cried. The older one held her close, trying to calm her, but her own voice shook. "He will protect us. Do not be afraid." The human pulled hard on the controls. The cargo ship lurched, swerving between jagged cliffs that rose from the barren planet below. Sparks flew as the ship scraped against stone. The hunters followed without fear, their weapons lit with red glow. A blast of energy tore past the cargo ship, shaking its hull. The sisters screamed. The human gritted his teeth. "Stay down!" he shouted. He twisted the controls again, forcing the ship lower. They skimmed across the rocky surface, flying so close that dust clouds exploded in their wake. Another blast struck the back of the ship. The lights flickered, alarms screamed. The human slammed a button, shutting down one engine. The ship spun, wobbling dangerously. But he wrestled it back into control. Sweat poured down his face. His heart pounded. The hunters laughed through their comms, their voices echoed in the night. "You cannot run, human," one sneered. "Give them back, and maybe we let you live." Another voice followed. "Or we burn you all together." The sisters clung tighter. The older one shook her head, whispering, "Do not listen. Do not give us up." Her voice cracked, but her eyes begged him. The human looked at her for a brief second, his gaze steady. "I will never give you up," he said. He pulled the ship into a canyon. The hunters followed close behind. The narrow walls echoed with the roar of engines. Rocks tumbled as the ship scraped past the cliffs. One hunter ship fired again. The blast smashed into stone, sending a storm of debris raining down. The human swerved just in time, dodging the falling rocks, but the canyon narrowed. The walls pressed closer. The cargo ship groaned as metal scraped against stone. Sparks lit the darkness. The hunters thought they had him trapped. One shouted, "End of the line," as his ship aimed for a killing shot. The human's eyes narrowed. He spotted a crack in the canyon wall ahead. It was narrow, dangerous, almost impossible, but it was the only way. He pushed the controls with all his strength. The cargo ship tilted, scraping along the rock. The sisters screamed. The ship shuddered as sparks exploded. For a heartbeat, it felt like the end. Then the cargo ship burst through the crack, barely wide enough to fit. A wall of stone sealed behind them, blocking the hunter's path. Two of the hunter ships slammed into the rock, their bodies bursting into fire and smoke. The third pulled up just in time, circling above, trapped on the other side. The sisters gasped, their eyes wide. The younger whispered, "We are alive." The older one hugged her tightly. "He saved us," she breathed. Her voice broke with relief, but the human's eyes did not soften. His hands still gripped the controls. "They will find another way," he said. "We must keep moving." He guided the ship out of the canyon, flying low across the wasteland. Suddenly, the cargo ship shuddered. A sharp alarm screamed. The damage from the blast was worse than he thought. One engine coughed and sputtered. The ship began to sink, dropping lower and lower toward the desert floor. The sisters cried out, "We are falling." The human fought the controls. "Hold on," he shouted. The ground rushed closer. He pulled every lever, twisted every switch. The ship groaned, metal screamed. Then, with a crash, it slammed into the sand, sliding across the ground until it finally stopped. The sisters lay in a heap, coughing, their bodies bruised but alive. The human pushed himself up, pain shooting through his arms. He looked out the cracked window and saw the horizon glow. The last hunter ship had found a path around the canyon. Its shadow fell over the desert. Its engines roared as it descended toward them. The sisters clung to him, their eyes wide with terror. "They will take us," the older whispered. The human stood, his breath heavy. He picked up a bent metal rod from the broken ship and gripped it like a weapon. His voice was low, calm, but full of fire. "They will not touch you," he said. The hunter ship landed with a hiss of steam. Its door opened. Armed figures marched out, their glowing weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward and grinned. "This ends now. Give them back, or die where you stand." The human stepped in front of the sisters, his shoulders broad, his grip tight on the rod, his eyes like steel. Behind him, the sisters pressed close, their chains still dragging. Their fear mixed with something new. Faith. The desert wind howled, carrying the silence between them. And as the hunters took aim, the human whispered, "Stay behind me." The desert night was cold. The stars stretched wide above, silent and endless. The broken cargo ship lay half buried in the sand, smoke still rising from its engines. The sisters sat close together, their small bodies trembling. Their chains rattled whenever they moved. The human sat nearby, his back against a piece of broken metal. His chest rose and fell heavily, His arms ached, his clothes were torn, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had fought the hunters and survived, but he knew the merchant's anger was not over. The merchant would keep sending men until he got what he wanted. The older sister looked at him in silence for a long moment. Her lips trembled as she finally spoke. "Why did you do this?" Her voice was soft, almost broken. "Why would a human risk his life for us?" The human turned his head. His face was tired, his beard rough, but his gaze was steady. "Because no one else would," he said. His voice was low, but each word was true. "You are sisters, you belong together. I will not let anyone tear that apart." The younger sister wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She crawled closer and touched his arm. Her voice shook. "Do you promise?" The human looked at her small, frightened eyes, and for the first time, he allowed himself a faint smile. "Yes," he said. "I promise." The sisters pressed against him, clinging as if afraid he might vanish if they let go. For a long time, none of them spoke. Only the sound of the desert wind and the faint crackle of the dying ship filled the air. Later, the human managed to light a small fire from broken wires and scraps. The glow cast soft light on their faces. The sisters ate from a small packet of dry food he had kept in his bag. It was little, but to them it was a feast. Their hands shook as they lifted each bite. Their eyes watered as if they could not believe. "It was real," the older sister whispered. "We have not eaten real food in days." The younger one nodded, her mouth full. "They gave us only scraps. Sometimes nothing." Her words trailed off into silence. The human listened, his jaw tightened, his fists clenched against his knees. He wanted to strike the memory of their suffering from the world, but he could not. What he could do was protect them now. When their hunger eased, the sisters told him their story. They spoke in broken voices, words trembling with pain. Their parents had died in the mines, worked to death under cruel overseers. The merchant had come soon after, offering fake promises of safety. Instead, he chained them, dragged them to markets, and prepared to sell them apart. The human listened to every word. His face grew darker, his heart heavier when they finished. The older sister whispered, "We thought no one would care. We thought we would die as nothing." The human reached out and placed a rough hand on her shoulder. "You are not nothing," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "You are alive, you are together, and as long as I breathe, you will stay together." The sisters cried again, but their tears were softer now. They were not only of fear, but also of hope. The night deepened. The fire burned low. The sisters leaned against him, their chains clinking gently as they drifted toward sleep. The younger whispered one last time, her voice half dreaming, "Do not leave us." The human looked at the stars, his eyes hard. "Never," he said, but he did not sleep. He sat awake, watching the horizon, waiting for the glow of engines or the shadows of hunters. He knew the merchant's revenge would come. The desert was quiet, but danger always waited in silence. When morning came, the sun rose over the sand, painting the world in gold and red. The sisters stirred awake. Their faces looked a little less pale. Their eyes held a little more life. The human stood and broke their chains with a piece of sharp metal he had found. It took effort, and his hands bled. But at last the bonds fell away. The sisters looked at their free wrists in awe. The older whispered, "We are free." The younger laughed softly, a sound almost forgotten. She threw her arms around the human. "Thank you." For a moment, the human felt something stir in his chest, something warm and heavy. He had saved lives before, but this was different. This was family, not his own, but family still. They walked together across the desert, searching for signs of shelter. Each step was hard, but the sisters stayed close. Their hands gripped his sleeves. They no longer looked at him as a stranger. They looked at him as something stronger. That night, they found an abandoned outpost. The walls were broken, the roof half collapsed, but it gave them shade. The human searched for supplies and found a few old containers of water. The sisters drank greedily, their lips cracked but smiling. As the stars rose again, the older sister sat beside him. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes shining in the firelight. "You are not like them," she said. "You do not see us as property." The human's voice was steady. "Because you are not," he said. "You are children, you are sisters, you are worth more than all the coins in this cursed galaxy." The sisters leaned against him once more, this time not only out of fear, but out of trust. Their hearts had been broken too many times, but now, piece by piece, they began to heal. And though the merchant's shadow stretched across the stars, though his anger burned hotter with every passing moment, the sisters knew one truth. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together, bound not by chains anymore, but by trust. The outpost gave them shelter, but it could not hide them forever. The human knew it. The sisters felt it too. Every time the wind howled through the broken walls, they jumped. Every shadow seemed like a hunter's shape. The memory of the merchant's smile still haunted them. Days passed slowly. The human repaired what he could, patching cracks with scraps, building a small fire each night. He kept watch as the sisters slept, his eyes never closing for long. They were safer than before, but never safe enough. Far away, the merchant seethed. His pride had been wounded, his profit stolen, his power challenged by a human. To him it was unforgivable. He bribed officials, spread lies, and promised rewards to bounty hunters across the colonies. "Find them," he hissed. "Bring me my property. Kill the human if you must." The galaxy has no shortage of men hungry for coin. Soon the merchant's reach stretched wide, and his fury carried across space like fire. Back at the outpost, the sisters began to smile again. The younger one laughed when she found a desert flower pushing through the cracks. The older one hummed softly at night, her voice no longer broken. The human listened in silence, his heart warmed by their fragile joy, yet he knew it could not last. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, dust rose in the distance. The human's eyes narrowed. He stood tall, scanning the desert with steady focus. His gut told him what was coming. Hunters, the sisters, noticed too. The younger clung to his arm. "They are coming, aren't they?" she whispered. The older pulled her close, but her own voice shook. "He will protect us." The human checked the piece of metal he had sharpened into a blade. It was no match for real weapons, but it was all he had. He looked at the sisters, his voice calm though his pulse thundered. "Stay behind me." Moments later, the outpost shook with heavy steps. Armed soldiers marched into the broken square. Their armor gleamed in the fading light. At their center walked the merchant himself. His green skin glistened, his sharp teeth bared in a cruel smile. The sisters gasped, their eyes wide with terror. The human stepped forward, his body shielding them. The merchant's laugh filled the square. "You thought you could run, human," he hissed. "You thought you could defy me." The crowd of bounty hunters and soldiers gathered, whispering among themselves. Some had never seen a human stand against an alien lord. Some wondered if he was mad. The merchant raised his hand. "Give them to me, and perhaps I let you live." His voice was honey over venom. "Fight me, and you will watch them suffer before you die." The human's grip tightened on his blade. His voice was steady, his words sharp. "They are not yours," he said. "They are free, and I will die before I let you touch them." The crowd gasped. The merchant's smile twisted into rage. His teeth flashed. "Then you will die," he spat. The soldiers advanced, weapons raised. The sisters pressed back against the wall. Their hands shook. Their breaths came fast, but the human did not step back. He stood in the middle of the square, one man against many, his eyes like steel. The first soldier charged, swinging his weapon. The human ducked low and struck with his blade. Sparks flew. The soldier fell with a cry. Another came, and another. The human moved with desperate strength, each strike fueled by more than survival. He fought for the sisters, for their bond, for the promise he had made. The sisters screamed as blasts lit the night. Dust rose, smoke filled the air. The human staggered, a cut on his arm bleeding, but he kept standing, kept fighting. His voice rang out. "Stay together," he shouted to the girls. "No matter what happens, stay together." The merchant watched, his fury growing. He had expected the human to break, but the man did not bend. He raised his voice over the chaos. Stop playing with him. End it now. The soldiers aimed their weapons. Their lights glowed. The sisters clutched each other, tears running down their faces. He cannot fight them all, the older whispered, her heart shattered. We cannot lose him. Then something shifted. The crowd of onlookers, traders, workers, even slaves began to whisper. They had seen cruelty before, but never a human stand against it. They had seen property sold, but never someone fight so hard to stop it. Slowly, murmurs grew. Why does he care? Why would he fight for them? The human staggered again, his blade nearly slipping, his knees buckled. Yet when he looked back at the sisters, their small hands clutching each other, he found strength again. He rose with a roar and struck the ground, forcing the soldiers back for a moment. The merchant's face twisted with hatred. He stepped forward, his claws sharp, his voice a hiss. I will tear them from your dead hands. The human lifted his blade, his chest heaving, his voice steady. Then you will have to kill me first. The square fell silent. Only the wind moved, only the fire in their eyes burned. The merchant's soldiers hesitated. Doubt flickered across their faces. The human's defiance shook them. The sisters pressed close, their hearts pounding. For the first time, they did not only see him as their rescuer. They saw him as unbreakable, a shield between them and the world. And as the stars rose above the outpost, the battle for their freedom reached its breaking point. The square burned with silence. Dust floated in the air. The broken outpost walls stood like silent witnesses. The merchant's soldiers held there, weapons high, but their hands trembled. They had never seen such defiance, a single human standing alone against them all. The sisters pressed against the wall, their small hands clutching each other. Their eyes wide with fear, but inside that fear lived a new fire. For the first time, they believed they might not be torn apart. For the first time, they believed in someone stronger than chains. The merchant's sharp teeth flashed as he hissed, Enough games, kill him now. His voice shook with rage. His pride demanded blood. The soldiers moved, but something in the air stopped them. The human stood tall, his blade raised, his body bruised, bleeding yet unbroken. His eyes burned like steel. His voice cut through the night. You will not take them, he said, steady and unyielding. Not while I breathe. The crowd of bystanders stirred. Whispers rose again, louder than before. Some shouted, He fights for them. Others cried, Why should we follow the merchant's cruelty? The doubt spread like fire. The merchant roared, Silence! He stepped forward, his claws sharp, his voice dripping venom. If my men will not end. This then I will. He lunged at the human. His massive frame moved with speed, his claws slashed through the air. The human met him head on. Their clash shook the square. Sparks flew as blades struck claw. Dust rose as their feet scraped against stone. The sisters screamed, No! But the human did not falter. He fought with the strength of desperation, every strike fueled by the promise he had made. The merchant was stronger, faster, but the human's will was unbreakable. The fight raged across the square. Soldiers circled, unsure whether to help. Or flee, the crowd shouted, some cheering for the merchant, others for the human. The sisters clung to each other, tears streaming down their faces, praying with every heartbeat. The merchant struck hard, his claws tearing into the human's arm. Blood spilled. The human staggered, but his grip on the blade never loosened. He looked at the sisters, two small figures holding on to each other, and he roared, driving forward with all his strength. Their clash ended in a single moment. The human's blade slid past the merchant's guard and struck deep. The merchant froze, his eyes wide with shock. His mouth opened, but no words came. His claws dropped. His body fell heavy onto the ground. Dust rose around him. And then there was silence. The soldiers stared. Their leader lay dead. The man they feared had fallen. The human stood above him, his chest heaving, his body trembling, his blade stained, yet his eyes still burned. He turned toward them and raised his voice. They are free, he said, and if any of you dare touch them again, you will face me. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Some dropped them altogether. The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in awe. Whispers spread like wind. A human did this. He fought for them. He killed the merchant. The sisters ran to him, their chains clinking, their eyes wide. With tears, they threw themselves into his arms, their voices broke as they cried, "You did it, you saved us." The human fell to his knees, exhausted, but he wrapped his arms around them, holding them close. "You are safe now," he whispered, his voice cracked with pain and relief. "You are together, and no one will ever tear you apart again." The older sister pressed her forehead against his chest. Her voice shook. "We thought we would be nothing." The younger added, "But you gave us everything." The human closed his eyes, his arms tightened around them. In that moment, he was no longer just a stranger. He was their shield, their family, their hope. The square slowly emptied. The soldiers left, unwilling to fight anymore. The crowd faded into the night, but whispers would spread across the colonies. Stories would travel fast, of one human who defied power, who stood against greed, who kept two sisters united when all the galaxy wanted to break them. Later, as the stars stretched wide above, the human and the sisters sat by a small fire outside the outpost. The night was quiet, the desert wind soft. The sisters leaned against him. No chains on their wrists now, only warmth and trust. The younger whispered, "What will happen now?" The human looked at the fire, his eyes heavy but calm. "Now we build a life," he said. "A life where you are never slaves, never property, only sisters free to stay together." The older sister's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow this time, but of hope. She nodded slowly. "Together forever?" she whispered. The human smiled faintly. He looked at the stars above and felt something shift inside him. He had come to the market a stranger, but he left with something greater than victory. He had left with family. And as the fire crackled, as the sisters fell asleep with their heads resting against his arms, the human whispered into the night. No chains, no fear, only family, united forever.